My name is Siri Enberg, and I'm the Senior Curator at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. Well, my job is pretty varied. We are a contemporary art museum, so we're basically focused on art of the 60s to the present. And I am involved in a couple of main areas. The first is exhibitions, and so I'm one of a team of people that helps put shows together that you see in the galleries of the Walker. And sometimes those are single artist shows, so it's maybe a show that looks at a whole artist's career from beginning to the present. Sometimes it's a group show where we're kind of thinking about a theme and bringing together lots of different artists that address that theme in some way with their work. There are lots of different kinds of shows that happen here, but it's for me it's an incredibly exciting part of the job because I'm always working with living artists for the most part. I'm getting a lot of input from them as the show progresses, and for me it's just a really exciting creative process, so I really enjoy that. And another part of my job involves acquisitions, which is buying works for the collection. And we're a museum that is fairly small compared to some in the country, but we have a really amazing, focused, permanent collection of about 13,000 objects. And one of the things I do is to help seek out works for the collection, either by artists who we've collected here in great depth, or artists that we're interested in bringing in. A lot of young artists. It's exciting to go to galleries or art fairs or artist studios and find something really exciting and new by an artist who's just emerging onto the scene, and that's something that we're very involved in doing, is bringing in young new artists into the collection all the time. But we also have really strong holdings here in our collection of artists who have been major forces in art history, from pop art and minimalism to conceptual art and all the way down the line. So it's an exciting collection to work with and to help shape. So that's another part of what I do. And then there's a lot of kind of day-to-day in terms of going to galleries, going to art studios, just staying connected in the art community, not only in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but also internationally. We travel a lot, the curators, and go to art fairs. A lot happens in New York because it's a kind of center of activity in the art world. So we do a lot of checking in every few months in New York, seeing what's going on, going to galleries. But there's also quite a bit of really exciting project-related travel, especially going spending time with artists. And so that's something we do a lot when we're on the road. But those are kind of the main areas of what we do.
Yeah.
My path was a little unconventional compared to what one would do today. So I always tell people that I'm not the best example, but I studied art history and English. That was kind of my double major in college. But I actually did not finish graduate school. I only did like a partial master's, and because I started working right away and I'm one of those people that started as a curatorial assistant, and then I became an assistant curator, and then an associate curator, and then a curator and senior curator. So I sort of had that old school path of working my way up the ladder. And these days, it's more advisable to go to a graduate program after studying maybe something in the liberal arts. There are a lot of great curatorial programs now in graduate school where people can actually study curatorial practice, and that didn't exist when I was 23 years old. So for me, it was more interesting just to get an internship and start, just get into it right away. But now there's a lot one can do to really study how to be a curator and what it means to be a curator, and what some of the theory around that and process around that. So it's much more of a shaped profession for contemporary art than it used to be when I was in school. So I would say that's a good path if you're interested in curatorial work, especially with contemporary art. But there are lots of other opportunities in curatorial work with all eras of art history. If you're interested in Egyptian art, or art from the Greek and Roman era, or if you're looking at Impressionism or 19th century, there's a lot. There are lots of opportunities out there. You just have to kind of find your niche and really study it. If one of the things that one would be kind of watching for to see if this would be a good career for you would be, are you a visual person? Do you enjoy looking at the world in a very visual way? Do objects and their relationships to each other speak to you in some way? Do you see images and respond to them and want to think about them and write about them and talk about them? And that, that's a good indicator for you that something like curatorial work might be interesting. A lot of curators come out of an art background, fine art background, where they've actually studied painting and sculpture and just know a little bit about process in that way. Others come to it from a much more art historical standpoint. But I would say that if you find that you respond to art in some way, if you find that you enjoy being with artists, you enjoy making connections between artworks, if you enjoy going to museums, if that for you is entertainment and fun and a place you can lose yourself, it's a great opportunity. When I was a kid, I would go to the Art Institute of Chicago a lot with my family because we lived close to Chicago, and I remember just my parents would just let me loose in the museum and let me wander around, and that was really a formative experience for me. I just realized this is kind of interesting. What could I do with this in the future? I liked seeing all the shows and the ways that the artworks were arranged in the space, and thought somebody actually thought of that. Somebody was behind that show that I just saw. And, so I started thinking even back in high school that might be kind of a fun career.
Seeing the final product, or?
My very favorite part is actually being in the galleries and hanging shows. Personally, I love, especially when it's with an artist. I really like getting into the space and bringing the artworks into the room and thinking about how they will respond to each other and have a conversation. Thinking or listening to an artist say how he or she wants their work to be hung. That part of it for me is really exciting because it's just a way that you're actually not only thinking about how things look together, but how do they tell a story for the public? And that's a really important part of curatorial work, is to be able to convey how artworks can actually form some kind of a narrative for a visitor, and also something that you've had a connection to can be conveyed to somebody else. So that part for me is really enjoyable. And I love working with living artists, just kind of getting to know them, developing that level of trust that will allow a show to become really magical. So that's fun. I think one of the challenges with probably any position these days is that there's a lot of administrative work involved. We're responsible for budgets, and we're responsible for a lot of financial things that take a lot of time and energy, maybe away from the more creative side of your job. And so that's always something to manage and balance and carve out the time for, but not to the exclusion of being able to feed yourself with the creative side. So the administration sometimes takes a lot of time. Email takes too much time. Things like that. When I first started my job here over 20 years ago, we didn't have email. It was like, I could just slowly open my mail and just see how the day would go, and just do some writing on my computer. And it's much different now. There's a constant flow of communication. So I think with any job these days, there's that to manage alongside everything else. I came here when they needed a curatorial assistant, so someone who would help on shows, be a support person to the curators, and it was a really amazing learning experience for me. It was better than an internship because I was instantly working on exhibitions right away, and helping with those and learning as I went. So for me, it was a great kind of entry level sort of. Walker it's called an art center. So one of the distinctions about that as opposed to an art museum is that we actually have curatorial departments in the visual arts, so painting, sculpture, photography, printmaking, but that's all kind of lumped together in one department. And then there is a curatorial department of film, and one of performing arts, and one of education and community programs. So these departments all work together. But we also, have a major theater space that presents performing arts productions, and a major cinema space, so the public can come and at any one time have offerings in any of those areas. They can go to the galleries or see films or see a dance performance or. So it's very much about the integration of disciplines in one building, and so that's then there's the sculpture garden too, and we're actually one of the the largest urban sculpture parks in the country. So that's a huge part of the programming and a huge part of what the visitors who come here go to see. So that's a major attraction for people. But the Walker is focused on art from the 60s to the present primarily. So we have the occasional Matisse or Picasso or earlier piece, but it's mostly, say, pop art and forward, that period of abstract expressionism and forward, the 50s on, that we're really strongest in. So people come here to see that. They expect to see work by living artists. They expect to see the new and the cutting edge, and we try to mix that in with work from earlier eras, just to kind of let people see the context by which all that new art came out of. Sometimes contemporary art can be scary to people. They think it's unapproachable, and what we try to do with our shows is really to show people where it's coming from, and what a given artist is thinking about, and how it actually is part of a larger conversation that goes back through time. So that's something the museum overall tries to do with its collections and with its shows. It just really tries to put forward in our messaging to the public.